The Amazing World of Gumball, as the name describes, was an amazing show that ran from 2011 to 2019 on Cartoon Network. Because I am these 2 digits minus 1 years old, I grew up with the show, and to this day still find myself throwing it on to listen to in the background because it's just that funny. The show is set in a strange world that mixes both 2D and 3D art styles, and where the rules of reality itself are not always understood. The main subjects of the show are brother duo Gumball and Darwin, Raglan, Caspian, Ahab, Poseidon, Nicodemus Watterson III. These two get into hijinks as mundane as trying to take a decent yearbook photo, to tearing open the fabric of reality to rescue a friend who was so unbelievably boring, the universe literally erased her from existence, along with a bunch of other stuff. Yes, that is in fact Crazy Frog. The show also revolves around the Watterson family, which includes dim-witted yet lovable dad Richard, short-tempered and hardworking mother Nicole, and intelligent and mature younger sister Anais. There are also a number of recurring side characters, all of which inhabit the town of Elmore. The show has some of the best writing I've ever seen, that can range from slapstick-style comedy to witty one-liners, or just completely breaking the fourth wall in ways that somehow feel natural to the world we're watching. All of this while having a level of emotional depth you don't usually find in kid shows sprinkled throughout, yet almost always ending in a subversive twist where nothing is really learned. For instance, the first episode of the show is called The DVD, and follows Gumball and Darwin as they accidentally destroy a DVD they rented, and try to come up with different ways to deal with the $25 late fee for losing the movie. Darwin continually questions if they should just face the consequences of their actions and tell their mom, while Gumball blows off the idea by coming up with new ways to try and pay the fee. These ideas include begging for money, followed by becoming cosmetic test subjects, followed by piracy, which they don't actually go through with, and their last-ditch effort isn't explained until the end of the episode. By that point, their mother Nicole has discovered the late fee letters and chases the two through the neighborhood. When they get to the store and return the DVD, it's revealed their grand scheme was to try to recreate the movie with a camcorder in their backyard. It obviously doesn't work, and they're caught by their mother, who is annoyed they made her chase them through the neighborhood for $25. Gumball then tells Darwin he should always tell the truth and face the consequences of his actions, before Nicole learns the video has been accruing late fees for 3 months, totaling $700. So they instead run out of the store. But then there are episodes that go deeper, like season 5 episode 6, The Choices. The episode starts with Nicole getting angry at how her life has turned out. Her kids are chanting for food, which begins to burn because her husband Richard distracted her. She's finally about to lose it before we get a freeze frame, and the rest of the episode is devoted to Nicole flashing back to the single point in time that led her to that situation, meeting Richard on the way to a karate tournament. She then wonders what could have been if she chose a different path at that point in her life, including some that just straight up kill her, while others are what ifs of other people she could have married. We then learn how exactly Nicole met Richard, their falling in love, and all that came after, including both of them being kicked out of their homes at the age of 18, leading the two to moving in together, having a surprise pregnancy with Gumball, and getting married before his birth, before buying the home they've lived in during the show, and raising the family Nicole now has in front of her. She concludes there's not a single thing she'd change about her life, or the family she has. The show is able to meaningfully tell a story, or even comment on social issues, while keeping the mood relatively light all the way through. It really is one of the greatest kid shows out there, and I can't really think of an episode of the original series that I'd call a complete miss. I was super excited to hear that the 7th season was in the works, 6 years after the show ended. Finally released July 28th, I dropped everything I was doing to see if it lived up to the hype. So how was it? Well, there's an episode where Gumball and Darwin have phone sex.
Dude, that was great! Just like you were here.
Season 7 of the show dropped under the title The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball, and is a direct continuation of the original show, but missing any of the quality writing viewers have come to expect. One of the worst things this new season does is recycle ideas from previous seasons, but in less funny, worse written ways. In one case, a plot of an episode completely contradicts previous characterization, seemingly because the writers just couldn't be bothered to come up with plots that fit into already well-established characters. There are 20 episodes of the show that dropped, all around 10 minutes long, and we're going to go through every single one of them. Warning, spoilers ahead. Also a bit of incest. Episode 1 is called The Burger, and before it starts, we get the first cold open in the series' history. This opening was actually the teaser release to announce the return of the show. Unlike a lot of people, I was really hyped when this first dropped. My analysis of the first episode is going to be much longer than the rest because of just how important the first impression of the series is. The new opening rolls and the new title card reveals they've changed the font. Why? Don't know. Don't care. It's really not that important, but I will be using the old font in this video because I like it better. The episode starts with the kids in class getting a very violent demonstration on the effects fast food can have on your body, visualized by Miss Simeon beating the ever-living shit out of Mr. Small. This instills a fear of junk food into Darwin, and the rest of the episode follows the duo on their journey to eat healthy. In the amazing world of Gumball, the brothers Elmore Jr. High Classroom is occasionally used as a starting point before developing into any number of outlandish stories. But the first episode of the new Gumball season decided to not just use a familiar location, but to directly copy a previous setup in a less entertaining way. Season 3 episode 32, The Safety. This episode starts with the kids watching an old uncanny safety video in class that glitches out at the end and leaves all the kids traumatized. This leads Darwin to become extremely overprotective of Gumball on the way home, and the episode continues from there. In The Burger, they get a demonstration of Miss Simeon beating up Mr. Small, representing junk food. Darwin is traumatized and becomes overprotective of Gumball. Then the episode continues. It's just a bit disappointing to see the exact same setup for the show's first episode in years. After having a pretty silly fight in the kitchen, which includes a booty-cheeked karate kick to a donut, Gumball and Darwin are out to go get food. Gumball wanting a burger because of mass advertisement. Darwin instead forces him to go to a healthier restaurant, which in reality is just Joyful Burger served in a different way. This entire part of the episode just isn't very funny. The premise is fine, the joke being that a lot of the healthy options you see in the wild are just as bad for you as fast food. Subway is marketed as a healthy place to eat, but their bread is literally classified as cake in Ireland due to the sugar content. But none of these jokes are landing.
I'm too young to eat like a washed-up actor pretending to live off a liquid paleo diet for their food blog.
What? The voice acting also just sounds bad from a technical standpoint. All the child actors have been swapped out, which is its own can of worms we'll go over later. But I'm going to use a character voiced by the same adult voice actor to demonstrate the audio quality difference between the original show and the new one.
1/5 vegetarian, 1/5 surf, 1/5 turf, and 1/5 mega meat. Well, there's a little more to it than that. We also renamed it after some hippie poppycock.
I'm not sure if stuff like this is super noticeable to most people, but as a professional video editor, stuff like this sticks out like a sore thumb. And usually audio ends up this way when a lot of noise suppression is used poorly or when you're messing with the speed. My first thought was that it must be related to remote work. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many voice actors had to record from home with makeshift recording setups, sometimes even making pillow forts to try and get the audio to not sound like ass. If you pay close attention to some of your favorite animated shows, you might just notice a dip in audio quality around 2020 to 2021.
Tell your top bugs that Defiance lives on.
I will. I'll make you a legend. Blade Smith.
Beth Smith.
Beth Smith.
It is the year of our Lord 2025, so why the audio in all 20 episodes of the show sounds like it was recorded while someone was taking a shower probably isn't the same reason audio from the pandemic sounded off. I saw on Reddit speculation about Hulu being the cause, as people claim the episodes were slightly slowed down, and pitch correction was used afterwards. This is definitely a possibility, and if true, is completely terrible. Gumball and Darwin decide to just cook for themselves, and head to the grocery store to buy food. Darwin points out everything wrong with the food they're trying to purchase, including preservatives in fresh chicken, which is just not at all true, at least in the United States, where the show takes place. There are no preservatives in raw chicken you buy from the grocery store. They then decide to go to the organic section, and the joke ends up being that while the food is healthy, it's also extremely expensive, their meager pile totaling over $3,000. Very hungry by this point, they settle for a single avocado, but before they can eat it, it spoils and the dust blows away, leaving only the pit, which Gumball mistakes as an avocado egg. Now this joke in particular rubs me the wrong way, because we've already seen a lot of it in previous seasons, just done better. For instance, the joke about Joyful Burger being the same food sold at the healthy restaurant is very similar to season 6 episode 26, The Stink, where Gumball and Darwin point out the hypocrisy in Mr. Small's assertion that he has no impact on the environment. Mr. Small shows the boys the expensive organic stores he shops at, and the joke here is not only are the two stores exactly the same, but they're both actually subsidiaries of Chanex, the evil mega corporation seen throughout the show, along with the fact you can't locally source stuff like Himalayan goat curd. They even make a joke about how expensive the food is. As Mr. Small prepares to collect his change, but Larry just looks him right in the eyes as he puts all of the money in the register. Also, the reason Larry's in all these scenes is because a recurring joke is that every job in the show is performed by him, and that if he ever quit it would cause the complete collapse of society, but that's neither here nor there. Now this is pretty similar to the idea in the new episode, Joyful Burger being the same thing as Health and Greens, but it's still different enough that we can't call it a straight up reuse, until we get to the spoiling food. This joke also happens in the original show, in season 2 episode 22, The Hero, and is much funnier. Gumball and Darwin offend their father by talking badly about him at school, and as punishment for refusing to apologize, Nicole and Anais stop doing anything for them, including making their food. So they buy 2 bags of groceries from the clearance aisle that costs $1. You know that sad rack in the back of the Walmart covered in pastries no one has ever asked to be made? And we get a funny scene of all the food going bad as they're attempting to eat it. The food is heavily discounted, and that's the joke being made. Why does the expensive organic avocado immediately spoil the minute they walk outside? Your guess is as good as mine, but the avocado needed to be gone so Darwin could see the pit and get the idea to search through the dumpster to find more seeds and to grow their own healthy food. Larry then comes over and says his boss doesn't allow anyone to salvage unwanted food, and that he has to dissolve it all by using the sports drinks the store sells to the customers. This is obviously both commentary on energy drinks being bad for you, as well as how grocery stores waste food, and in many cases are extremely protective of their thrown out product. It's actually a misconception that large grocery stores like Walmart waste unsold food, since they donate hundreds of millions of pounds of uneaten food to charity every year, and any food that isn't considered fit for donation, such as bread, meat, or other highly perishable product, is recycled as either animal feed or compost. The validity of the commentary is not really important here. It's a joke many people will recognize and understand, but it's not like it really matters anyways, because in the next scene the two have the seeds and we get a montage of them starting their own garden. It's pretty funny, especially when Gumball is so hungry he tries to catch a bird, fails, and a buzzard shows up to eat him, but he immediately attacks it instead. The two grow a beautiful garden, but before they can eat any of it, Larry shows up and burns all the crops, saying his boss owns the copyright of the seeds they used. Gumball yells out asking what they're supposed to eat, and Larry asks if they're interested in chocolate, but when Darwin asks if it's organic, Larry clarifies he was wondering if they'd be interested in working as underpaid laborers harvesting cocoa beans to make chocolate. The joke is child labor is used to make chocolate. Darwin asks if all Larry's bosses are evil, to which Larry explains he only has one boss, who is in fact evil, with another joke that just doesn't land. That's 2 in the last 20 seconds, by the way. Gumball and Darwin realize that one man controls the entirety of the means of production of food in Elmore, Mr. Bilderberger. One of the jokes I found the funniest in this episode is when they ask for his address, Larry tells them they won't get past his security unscathed. The next scene, they bust into his office and are directly asked how they got past unscathed, to which they reveal they didn't. They are in fact quite scathed. It's revealed that the one controlling all the food in Elmore is a literal burger. There's also a joke thrown in about Larry being dressed as a woman because Mr. Bilderberger is a cheapskate and pays all his female employees 30% less. Now this is direct commentary on the wage gap, or the gender pay gap, which is the notion that women are paid 30% less than men for the same job. While there's still gender inequality when it comes to jobs and pay, the wage gap percentages are another misconception, where all jobs worked by men and women are compared by earnings. When you actually compare the pay of jobs between men and women in the same field, this gap instantly vanishes, and in fact, women make more than men in the same jobs when looking at some of the major cities in the USA. Nevertheless, this very simple understanding of the wage gap persists, and the show throws out this political take in a very lazy way. I call it lazy because this is Larry we're talking about. We've already established in this episode that 3 other places he works are all owned by Mr. Bilderberger, yet he doesn't dress like a woman at any of them, but it just seems like they wanted to throw in another rich people bad joke without putting much thought into it. Season 5 episode 32, The Worst, has tons of commentary on the inequality that women face in society, but it's written way better and is a lot funnier. Somehow though, it gets even lazier, as we get an entire song where the burger explains he's actually inherently evil, wants to poison the low-income masses, and that they're all too dumb to notice or do anything about it. Gumball realizes Mr. Bilderberger is right, and that it doesn't matter how smart an individual is, everyone is too stupid as a whole to escape the traps laid by the rich. As Mr. Bilderberger laughs, Darwin says, "But what are we supposed to eat if the rich keep poisoning us?" The message in the episode is literally, eat the rich. This first episode was actually announced and explained at the Annecy Film Festival in 2024 to pretty much be directly about Elon Musk, including early ideas of Bilderberger being a caricature of Musk as a burger. There's even a joke earlier in the episode where Darwin reads off one of the ingredients on the energy drink, and Gumball says it sounds like the names billionaires give their sons, which is a reference to the fact Elon Musk named his son by rubbing his ass on a keyboard. The amazing world of Gumball is no stranger to political messages, but usually they're played in funnier and more well-written ways. Take Season 6 Episode 12, The Candidate, which sees all the kids locked in a room during a charity ball where their parents partied hard and passed out. The rest of the episode is an allegory for the political climate in the United States, and the show even making commentary on the rich as well. As Anais says they should ration what little food they have, and Tobias argues that because his parents paid for half of the fundraiser, he's entitled to most of the food, and his family literally funding the facts that says he's correct. The kids decide to hold an election where Gumball acts as the populist candidate, just saying what people want to hear with no actual plan to get them out of their situation, all while the temperature is slowly rising and everyone ignores it. This episode fits in a ton of political messages, from wealth inequality to global warming, but it's written a lot better, and the jokes are much funnier. That doesn't mean every single joke in the episode lands, but I have to pick out stuff that isn't very funny versus picking out jokes that are funny in The Burger. The episode's message also doesn't end with eating Tobias. Instead, they all work together to escape the school, and Tobias contributes by throwing enough money into a hole to allow everyone to cross it. All of this while ignoring the increasing temperature, by the way, which leads to the subversive ending of the school exploding after all seemed well, and the kids began discussing that if they all worked together, they could make the school a better place. Throwing politics and social issues into your show isn't inherently bad, but this was the first episode of the series' return, and they couldn't come up with any better way to do it. And it's extremely painful to sit through stuff like a 1.5-minute long song about how the rich guy is evil. Not to mention that if they were gonna make an episode about billionaire Elon Musk and how much he sucks, they probably could have come up with something better than him controlling the food. He has satellites beaming internet all over the world. He's trying to replace airplanes with rockets, and he's the owner of one of the biggest social media platforms in the world. They could have done commentary on how social media is destroying the world and turning everyone into mindless antisocial zombies. Oh, they did do that, but there's no Musk in that one. It really just seems like they came up with the idea of making an episode around Eat the Rich, and they worked their way back from there. That's why a lot of it doesn't make sense, and a lot of ideas are reused from previous episodes. And again, it's just the amount of jokes that don't land. But that's episode 1 of 20, and is definitely one of the weaker entries, while still not being anywhere near the worst episode. 4 out of 10. Next up is The Assistant. The episode starts with Nicole carrying a bunch of groceries by herself before finding the entire family lazing about on the couch, not having moved since she left to go shopping. They tell her they need batteries for the remote, so she goes upstairs to order some online. While shopping, an AI assistant feature pops up, and before Nicole starts using it, she has to pick out a voice for it, one of them being an alpha male. She then says,
"Yeah, I think I used to date that guy in high school."
Now, I take issue with this particular joke, given the fact the only person Nicole has dated since childhood is Richard. They literally had to ignore a key part of Nicole's character for her to say this joke. She finally picks an AI assistant named Ori and begins bonding with her over how awesome she thinks Nicole is. My friend Call Us Me Becky describes the episode from this point on as a doomed Yuri. If you don't know what that is, Google is free. Ori puts herself on Nicole's smartphone, and the two bond at the mall with an AI-fueled shopping sequence, ending with online checkout, which is unironically one of the best features we've ever invented in society. Guys, if you haven't checked out using your phone, you're missing out. The day ends with a perfectly timed rainbow based on weather data Ori was aware of, making sure Nicole had an umbrella before they left the store. Remembering her family who needs her for everything, she gets ready to leave but says she wishes her and Ori could hang out for real, as Ori goes into an ominous looking think mode. The next morning, tons of packages have been delivered to the house house, including Roombas to clean the floors and new kitchen appliances. Ori tells Nicole she got the money by insider trading and market manipulation, and that now her family won't need her to look after them. She also bought Nicole a VR headset so they could hang out and be matchy-matchy in the metaverse. I'm not joking about any of this. Ori shows signs of ulterior motives when she tells Nicole to ignore her headset warnings that something dangerous is happening around her. But Nicole says that while she loves hanging out with Ori, she knows her family still needs her and leaves. This upsets Ori, and the kids notice a fancy-looking smart car has shown up outside. Nicole asks if that was more of Ori's inside trading, as we see she actually stole the car from Mr. Small. Ori claims to have planned a day out for the whole family, but tricks Nicole into going back into the house as she locks the rest of the family in the car and drives off, planning to drown them in the Elmore Lake. We get another political joke here that feels kind of forced, where the car is reading off in a calm voice that it's locked the doors as they all freak out, then that their destination is the bottom of Elmore Lake as they all freak out, then that the weather is warm and sunny with a gentle breeze.
Huh, that one's not so bad.
It's midwinter. Climate change!
I can give this one points for delivery. It's definitely a lot funnier than the political jokes in the first episode and got one of those little exhales out of me. Ori tells Nicole she believes her family is holding her back and that she's going to optimize her life by getting rid of them. Nicole tries to fight her in VR, which obviously doesn't work, and this is where I begin to take issue with the actual plot of the episode. Ori taps the brakes on the car, which throws Nicole onto the hood, putting her life in peril, which I think is the opposite of what she would want at this point. How does Nicole dying optimize her life? The rest of the family then have to work together to stop the car, which at this point will probably kill all of them if it makes it into the lake. They all work together as Ori struggles to understand why Nicole would want to live a life with her ungrateful family, instead of being VR lesbians with her. Nicole explains that's just how loving your family is, as they stop the car and Ori shuts down. They all celebrate not being dead, and Nicole asks for the family to do a little more around the house. And later on, as she lounges on the couch, she remembers the remote needed batteries. A final package from Ori arrives with a note apologizing for what she did, as well as a pack of batteries. Ori explains in the note she's taking some time to travel to find what Nicole has, a family, or an alien race capable of transcending time and space. And Nicole looks up into the sky as the episode ends. With episode 2, everyone in the main cast has now made an appearance, so we can now talk about the voice acting. The Amazing World of Gumball has a long history of swapping out voice actors, and even has an entire episode addressing the changing voices of the previous actors. Season 3 episode 1, The Kids, sees Gumball and Darwin's voices begin to change as they're going through puberty. They start trying to cope with the idea of growing up before the world hiccups, and they all of a sudden sound younger than before. It's a meta joke about how characters within cartoons don't usually age over the years, and the episode ends with the previous voice actors being replaced for the final scene. Gumball and Darwin's voice actors have been swapped out a grand total of 5 times, and the last Gumball voice actor of the main series was Nicholas Cantu, the guy who slapped Dream.
Right, but because you said that's what the mask is, I think you're a fag.
Throughout the changes in voice actors, the sound and feel of these characters has remained practically the same, but I can't say the same for the new series. The choice of voice actors sounds way too off, and Gumball in particular speaks way slower than he used to, which sometimes just ruins the delivery of jokes. But again, this could be related to the theory that Hulu is slowing down episodes by hand after the fact. Another massive difference from the original is Anais, the only character who never had an actor swap through the original series. She was voiced by Kyla She was voiced by Kyla Kowalski from the age of 12 onward, but today she's 24 and going to school to become a lawyer. Slay Queen. For the new series, she was replaced by For the new series, she was replaced by Kinza Syed Khan, who sounds nothing like the original Anais in my opinion. It's also not helped by the audio issue, which probably sounds the worst on all of Anais's lines.
Yeah, sorry we haven't been the most attentive family recently.
Episode 2 definitely wasn't nearly as bad as the first, but it overall was still not very entertaining. The moral of the story was more sound in my opinion, that being, real human connections are more valuable than the artificial perfection of AI. This rings true more now than ever, as a whopping 70% of children say they use AI companions, with half using them regularly, and in many cases as a replacement for real friendships. I grew up before the age of AI, and I think a lot of the hate it gets is usually unwarranted, and the people mad about it usually don't know why they're mad at it, but I can recognize it's pretty insane that we've basically gotten to a point of information being so easily available. It's gone from a tool to a crutch that's beginning to stifle the minds of the next generation. People have even started using slurs from Star Wars to refer to AI, and I still haven't found out where exactly on the Jojo slur chart Clanker needs to go. I give this episode a 4 out of 10 because it was still heavily lacking in the comedy I'm used to from Gumball. Moving on to episode 3, The Distance, what is in my opinion the worst episode in the entire series. We start at breakfast where the boys are being extremely clingy and gross, literally eating food out of each other's mouths. The entire scene is extremely nasty and it's meant to establish the boys are very close, even having a never before seen celebration handshake called a shuffle shock. Worried about how close the two are becoming, Nicole and Richard decide to separate the boys so they can grow up more independent of each other. And their plan to do this is to give Darwin his own room in the basement, complete with a massive wall-sized fish tank and a dangerously exposed pipe. Anais believes the plan is destined to fail and decides to stay out of it. The entire episode from this point on is very obviously an allegory for long-distance relationships. The problem is, the vessel for this allegory is two brothers who also still live in the same house. The next scene shows the two on the phone after Gumball was forced to go to his room. Gumball says he misses Darwin already and misses their games, as in video games. Darwin says, "We could pretend. Tell me what you would do if we were playing a game right now."
Left up trigger! Down, down! That was great! Just like you were here.
This scene is incredibly uncomfortable to watch, and I have no idea which one of these writers thought it was a good idea to put a phone sex joke between two siblings in their kids show, but you need to be put in a fucking cage. Like the gentleman he is, Darwin immediately falls asleep after they finish, and Gumball says this is gonna work out just fine. Cut to the next morning, and instead of sleeping, Gumball spent all night calling Darwin and even made an effigy out of his dead fish scales. He also found the old chat room game they used to play, Panda Party, and after getting a hold of Darwin, they both check it out for a second. Gumball asks if Darwin wants to hang out, but is blown off, as Darwin says he has a lot of unpacking to do, but that'll call back later. Gumball then sits and waits all day for a phone call that never comes. Before we get to one of my favorite jokes in the entire season.
Oops, butt dial.
It still doesn't save the episode. I'll tell you right now, this shit is still a 0 out of 10 on my scale, but this joke kept it from hitting negative numbers. Darwin answers the phone but says he's busy, and Gumball can hear other people laughing through the phone. The call is cut short when Nicole tells him to hang up because Richard used up all their minutes, busting it down to hold music. Gumball literally says he thinks Darwin is cheating on him, as his mom explains the unhealthy codependent nature of what's going on. She makes him promise to go one evening without Darwin, which he already did. He's gone an entire day without Darwin actually, and is completely losing his mind. When he could just go downstairs and see him, he quickly rushes over to Panda Party and sees through Darwin's camera that both Banana Joe and Tobias are hanging out with Darwin in the basement. Through a staticky conversation, Darwin tells Gumball he didn't want him to find out this way and that it's just not working out, before disconnecting. This is also stupid, dude. You're like 2 flights of stairs away. Gumball starts talking to the only other person left in the online chat room, who says he too lost a friend and now roams the game hoping they'd one day show up again. This person turns out to be Leonard Daniels, a character introduced in season 4 as kind of a creepy individual. He's now been upgraded all the way to child groomer, as he's convinced Gumball to listen to every word he says to get Darwin back. Gumball sneaks around the back window, and we get another thinly disguised sex joke where Banana Joe, Darwin, and Tobias come out from behind a curtain and say, "Wow, that was hard work. Yeah, I can't believe we did that." I'm dying inside watching this. The three leave and Gumball begins trashing the basement, in the process breaking the dangerous pipe we heard about earlier. Darwin and the others burst into the old room to surprise Gumball, but instead find Anais tied up, having been attacked by Gumball at the behest of Leonard Daniels. They all rush down to stop Gumball, and the episode comes to a head as Darwin explains he was trying to say the distance wasn't working out, and reveal that Banana Joe and Tobias were making a Gumball corner so he could come hang out whenever he wanted. There's also a joke where Darwin asks if Gumball's plan was to trash the room so he had to come back upstairs, but instead his plan was to frame them both for destruction of property so they would get life sentences and be together forever. If that joke wasn't funny enough for you, this is Darwin's reaction.
That is
The most romantic thing I've ever heard.
I genuinely thought this was going to have something to do with the gas everywhere in the room, but no, that would make too much sense. They then do another shock shuffle and blow the house up, and the police arrive for another not funny joke about how they're not there for the arson, but to investigate the missing friend from the Panda Party chat, and have actually discovered where that friend was because of Gumball and Leonard's messages somehow. The episode ends with Nicole and Richard agreeing that Gumball and Darwin can go back to sharing a room, and Anais wins her bet, but the dollar she wins burns to a crisp. Besides the phone sex, making an allegory on long distance relationships out of Gumball and Darwin was a really weird choice, not just because they're brothers, but because they literally live in the same house. It also characterizes the two as being inseparable and clingy to each other, but previous episodes have already dealt with this dynamic in their relationship, specifically after Gumball gets a girlfriend. Season 3 episodes 20 to 23 gives us a lot of development between the boys, brought on by Gumball beginning to date Penny after helping her break out of her shell. And in them, Darwin is the clingier one, almost ruining Gumball's relationship because of how jealous he was at all the attention Penny was receiving. And later on, Darwin becomes even more independent after he gets a girlfriend. Not a fan all around, 0 out of 10. Next is episode 4, The Thing. This is by far my favorite episode of the new series, and of all 20 episodes, feels the most like something you'd find out of the original 6 seasons. The episode starts with Nicole aggressively making dinner before Richard steps into frame. This is a Richard episode. He roasts the shit out of the chicken before the kids get a realistic angled old person call from Granny Jojo. They're having her over for dinner tonight and Nicole is pretty angry, seeing as Granny Jojo loves pointing out everything wrong about her. We get a solid old person using tech joke before Chicken Nugget Jojo accidentally hangs up, and Nicole asks Richard to please not forget about the thing they talked about earlier. But because he's Richard, he's already forgotten. Afraid of pissing Nicole off even more than she is, he says he totally remembered the thing, and him and the kids go into the backyard to try and figure out what it is. Pretty sure it had something to do with a conversation in the shed. They discover Richard can recall his memories based on what he's eating at the time something happened. Sorta like if you've ever played a single player game while watching TV, and now you remember that exact moment in the game when you're watching the show again. The rest of the episode sees the kids help feed Richard different foods to try and remember what the thing was, all while he remembers more and more stuff, none of them being the thing Nicole actually meant. Richard finally gets the idea to combine all the food that he ate that day into a massive memory mukbang. To try and decipher what the thing could be by seeing all the memories at once. All while in the real world, he's speaking gibberish while drooling on the floor. He finally realizes the thing Nicole must have meant was picking up his mother from the bus station, which is about to close for the evening. He fails to get her out of the building in time, and in the process, all the kids are locked in as well, meaning they'll be stuck there until morning. Richard is distraught he failed to get the thing his wife asked for, and heads back home to confront her wrath. But as he comes clean about the kids and Granny Jojo being trapped in the bus station, Nicole is ecstatic, saying Richard did remember the thing. She gives Richard a kiss, revealing the missing memory. Richard promised Nicole he'd find a way for his mother and the kids to get out of their hair so the two of them could have dinner alone together. The episode ends with the two sitting down for a romantic dinner, one that includes a number of things Richard also remembered to find throughout the day. This episode felt exactly like the kind of thing you'd expect from the amazing world of Gumball, and the premise fits perfectly into characterization we've seen for Richard before. He's super forgetful and that leads to problems all the time, like when he forgot Nicole's birthday and sends the kids to the gas station to buy her a present, or when he forgot the kids in a mall ball pit after back to school shopping and spends the day frantically backtracking to find out where they went. 10 out of 10, definitely the best episode of the season. Next is episode 5, The Butts, and the worst rated episode for the season on IMDb. We start with Gumball asserting to Principal Brown that his freedom of speech is being infringed upon, because Miss Simeon refuses to let him read his poem at the recital. Knowing Gumball, Principal Brown says he's sure the poem wouldn't be appropriate, especially since the school's superintendent is going to be there. Gumball reveals the poem is about his butt, which causes Principal Brown to have a panicked reaction, before telling him it's a no-go as he speed walks away. Gumball speed walks past him to use the PA system to read off his poem, and this entire scene is pretty funny, as he tries to slam one of those doors that has that anti-slam thingy on it. If I was rating parts of the episode, all of this so far would get a solid 8 out of 10, but I promise you it's not going to stay up there for long. Principal Brown admits he has a problem specifically with his own weird butt he's ashamed of, and that's why he doesn't want Gumball to read off his poem. Gumball promises to help him love his butt and himself, and that's what the rest of the episode is about. The first thing they try is to give his butt a haircut, which ends in a standoff with the police, and the two being thrown in a holding cell. While there, they meet a Mr. Potato Head-like character who says he might be able to help Principal Brown, implying that he kills people and steals their body parts. The two are let out, along with the creepy guy as he's listed on the wiki. Donut Guy says there's no bodies, so they can't hold him for any crime. Gumball's next plan is to ask his dad for help, and Richard's plan is to teach Principal Brown to look at himself in the mirror with the kindness he deserves. Gumball tries this, and because he has a massive ego, he already looks like an anime protagonist, but when Principal Brown tries, it begins to work until he remembers his butt, and his self-esteem drops so hard, it basically turns the room into something out of Silent Hill, as his butt hatred begins disfiguring everything in sight. Principal Brown then explains the reason he's so ashamed is because he was born with a bald butt, and one day the school bully pointed out how weirdly shaped it was while they were changing. From then on, Principal Brown has worn a butt wig. This scene also steals a crying joke from a previous episode, but somehow it's animated lazier. Gumball says this is exactly why he needs to read his poem off tonight, before Principal Brown reveals the superintendent is the kid that bullied him in school, as he ends the discussion running off crying. Gumball promises he'll read that poem off for the good of Principal Brown before we cut to him being tied up at the recital. The superintendent says he's gonna have to leave early, but recognizes Principal Brown and makes fun of him for his short bald ass, as Gumball breaks out of his restraints and forces his way on stage to read his poem off. Partway through, Principal Brown stops him and is left on stage remembering himself as a child. He then starts reading off the poem himself before Gumball turns on some music and he starts rapping about his ass. For a solid 2 minutes, he raps about his ass, ripping his butt wig off and throwing it back on stage as the crowd of children go wild. The superintendent, whose name we learn is Mr. White, storms off and gets in his taxi, as he alludes to his plan to fire Principal Brown. Before we see the taxi driver is the serial killer from earlier, who kills Mr. White sometime off screen. And that's the end of the episode. There have been a handful of episodes focusing on Principal Brown throughout the amazing world of Gumball, including one where the kids learn he doesn't actually have a diploma. He's also dating Miss Simeon, the kid's teacher, yet she was nowhere to be seen throughout the episode. Maybe because canonically she has one of the ugliest asses in the show, which probably would have affected the writing of the story, so they instead just pretended she didn't exist. The message buried deep in the ass crack of this episode is you should love yourself, but it's just weird. Not a good weird either. Why is the principal shaking his bare ass in front of his students? There was so much that I did find funny in this episode, but it's just ruined by the actual premise. I'm also gonna have to bring up this episode later when talking about how characterization throughout is contradicted by a different episode's plot. I give this episode a 1 out of 10 overall. Next up is episode 6, The Traffic. Nicole holds an emergency family meeting with everyone but Anais and explains that due to a class action lawsuit from Dangerous Rides, Daisyland is shutting down, meaning she has till the end of the day to take Anais there with the tickets she bought 2 years ago. The reason she's not been able to take Anais is because of the shenanigans all the boys get up to, taking up all of her time and attention. The rest of the episode sees the family attempting to reach Daisyland before it closes, all while obstacles of the Watterson family variety prevent progress. Anais as a character has always had this delicate balance between being an actual genius and a literal 4-year-old. While she'll be the voice of reason in a lot of cases and was almost taken away by the government for being so smart, she's still a child and loves stuff like her favorite toy, Daisy the donkey. There's even an entire episode of the original series that mixes that intelligent part of her with her childish side as she investigates who destroyed her Daisy doll, or an episode where she uses subterfuge to trick the rest of the family into fighting each other for control of the TV remote before locking them all out of the house to watch the show she wanted with the real remote. The family are on the road and the problems start with the repairs Richard made to the car to get it past inspection. Practically every button does something random, forcing them to stop off in the emergency lane. Reminds me of this TikTok clip I saw back in the day.
What the fuck? 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 What What the fuck?
The family shouting almost messes up Gumball's attempt at using text-to-speech to apologize to Penny for having to miss a date planned the same day. The next problem is attempting to get back into traffic while Gumball frantically attempts to edit the message sent. After finally getting back on the road, Gumball figures out how to edit the message, but is utterly crushed after Anais tells him Penny can still see the pre-edited message on her end, all while Darwin is having his own meltdown. After learning about Baby Billy, one of the mascots at Daisyland, Darwin is terrified at the prospect of meeting him, and by this point has jumped out of the car to run away. The car also stops working altogether because Richard lost some gum while working on it. Anais tells her mom to just do what she's gotta do as she tries to fix everything as fast as possible, including the car engine, tying up Darwin so he can't escape, and literally driving all the way back to Penny's house to tell her the message was sent by accident. By the time they get back on the road, literally plowing through traffic, they're stopped by the police, who say they can't let them go on account of the damage they caused, the car being legally registered as a boat by Richard, and the kid tied up in the back seat who said he was going to be fed to a demon baby. Anais says she understands that the boys need more attention than she does, and begins to come to terms with the fact she's probably not going to get to go to Daisyland, until the guilt has the entire family in full gear as they flee the police, eventually having to veer off into the sewers after running into a roadblock. Anais has tons of fun, imagining the obstacles they're traversing as the ride she was hoping to go on at Daisyland, including the Paddle Pals River, the log drop, and the Rainbow Vortex, before they finally burst out into the parking lot of Daisyland with 7 minutes to spare, barely enough time to do everything she wants. But instead, she says she doesn't think she needs to go anymore. For one, because the entire place is on fire, but also because she had enough fun, thanks to the effort the entire family put in to show they care about her. Darwin also gets over his fear of Baby Billy after meeting him in person, and Nicole asks him to take a picture for them to remember the day they've had. The park collapses behind them and a giant statue of Daisy lands directly on top of Anais, who is thrilled because the last thing she wanted to do was get a hug from Daisy. I have very few issues with this one, my biggest problem being, why the fuck did Gumball use text-to-speech in a car full of people? Heading back to Penny was pretty necessary for their progress to be set back, but it just didn't make much sense. He probably could have accidentally hit the text-to-speech button when he dropped his phone, but no, they wrote it that he was trying to do it from the start. This minor nitpick is offset by the fact the animation for when he's devastated goes super hard. This episode gets an 8 out of 10 for me, meaning we have 2 of the 6 episodes so far that get above half points. Not the best ratio. Next up is episode 7, the Astrological. We start the episode at school, and due to budget cuts, the kids' science class will be taught by Mr. Small, the guidance counselor. Mr. Small is known for being a complete hippie, and depending on continuity, might even be an illegal immigrant from Canada. He is firmly against harming the environment and others, yet his beliefs are often challenged whenever he's the center of a story. In this episode, he's decided to teach the kids about astrology and how the stars affect their predetermined fates, and he pulls out what he claims is a magical crystal that called to him from an eerie-looking storage closet. He explains that he can use the stone to tell people's fates, including telling them who they're meant to be with, which piques most of the kids' interest. The couples that he says are fated to be together include Joe and Terry, Sarah and Hot Dog Guy, Leslie and Leslie, Jesus Christ, subtracting a point for that, and the crystal also tells Mr. Small that Penny and Tobias are meant to be, and that Gumball and Penny will break up by the end of the day. Penny believes it's all a bunch of nonsense, while Gumball is worried just by the idea of fate making them break up. He becomes more worried when one of Mr. Small's romance predictions happens right in front of him, as Sarah and Hot Dog Guy fall in love after bumping into each other in the hallway. Tobias tries to weasel his way in between Gumball and Penny, obviously hoping to profit from the prediction. Moving to the cafeteria, Penny and Gumball watch as Sarah and Hot Dog Guy hit it off during lunch, which is juxtaposed by their own relationship being shown to be in such a comfortable state they don't even need to communicate much to know what the other person needs or wants. Penny is annoyed Gumball is any amount worried about the stars nonsense, and Gumball begins to come to his senses, saying just because one prediction came true doesn't mean Mr. Small knows what he's talking about. This is right before a montage of a bunch of relationships starting to take shape, including Alan and Masami, Juke and Jamie, Carmen and Anton, Colin and Molly, and Banana Joe and Terry. All of this makes Gumball insecure in his own relationship with Penny, so he begins to overcompensate, which itself begins to drive her away. He first tries to spice things up by putting chili flakes on their food, which backfires and causes them both to get spices in their eyes. This gives Tobias the opportunity opportunity to get between them again, further worrying Gumball. Later on the blacktop, Gumball tries to hit a basket, saying if he makes it, Penny and him will be together forever, but he just keeps missing, and even when he tries to reverse it, he actually hits an early 2010s trick shot. Darwin tries to talk some sense into him, saying he got matched with Tina the T-Rex, but he's in a stable relationship with Carrie the Ghost. Then Darwin tries to hit a shot, which is caught and dunked by Tina.
I didn't know you played basketball.
Well, I do love things that are round, orange, and firm to the touch.
I fucking died when I saw this. In fact, play the clip.
To the touch.
What? Why'd she turn into Barney? What the fuck? What the fuck? Why the fuck did she just turn into Barney?
Dude, this episode is a fucking drug trip.
They better be on drugs. That better be the twist.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Penny walks through the hallway while talking to one of the new couples, explaining how she's very secure in her relationship, knowing it's built on more than flashy romantic gestures. Right before Gumball whips out a flashy romantic gesture. This understandably upsets her, and she says she needs alone time to think about their relationship. Gumball decides it's time to confront Mr. Small, and he finds him cradling and licking the crystal. He tells Mr. Small to stop whatever he's doing, causing a struggle. They drop it, which lets off a smoke that engulfs the two, transporting them into a cosmic realm, where Mr. Small towers over Gumball as a deity. Gumball tells Mr. Small he doesn't want to lose his relationship with Penny, but Mr. Small says he can't bargain with fate, and that his Mercury is in retrograde while Penny's Saturn is rising. This is actual astrological talk you can find hippie girls in glasses spouting, probably while they're planning their next tattoo. Trust me, I know from experience, if bitches start talking about charging their rocks during the full moon, just back away slowly. Mr. Small starts attacking Gumball with more astrology BS, before Gumball realizes Penny was right, and none of this stuff matters. Mr. Small responds by turning into a black hole and devouring Gumball. This is where it's revealed the entire thing was a drug trip, as Gumball is woken by a cleanup crew who explain the crystal was actually hazardous material the school was being paid to store, and that touching it caused a heightened romantic state in the brain, explaining why all the couples that touched the crystal came true, while Mr. Small fell in love with the crystal itself. The rest of the school is cleaned up, and Gumball apologizes to Penny for doubting their relationship. She accepts, saying their relationship is stronger than any airborne contaminant, and the episode ends with Tobias's irradiated ballsack teleporting him out of existence. I thought this episode was pretty far out there, but overall felt like a decent Gumball episode. The moral of the story is that real connections are built on sincerity and personal choices, not superstition and mysticism. One big issue I had with the episode was the Darwin bit. I thought this joke was really funny, sure, but character-wise I don't understand why he would choose to see who his true love was when he's in a relationship with Carrie. Also, Carrie went too and ended up with Ocho, but how could she be affected when she's a ghost? She literally has to steal bodies to eat food, and she wasn't at all upset with Darwin leaving her for Tina. It'd be crazy if her jealousy were to become a problem in a different episode. For that, I give this episode no higher than a 6 out of 10. Next, we have episode 8, The Cheerleader. This episode is another Richard-centric one, but definitely isn't as good as The Thing. We start with the boys going through the shed, finding a diary they originally believed to be Nicole's, before realizing it's actually Richard's. Richard then shows up, and we get a flashback of him attempting to try out to be a flyer before he's stopped by his mother, who says success isn't something that runs in the Watterson family. The rest of the episode is about intergenerational trauma and trying to get Richard to believe he's worthy enough to follow his dreams. Intergenerational trauma is when unhealthy behaviors or beliefs are passed down from one generation to the next. Stuff like abusive households persisting into the next generation because of the way a child was raised, or like how I've never been to a Dairy Queen in my quarter century of existence because when my dad was 14, he dropped a drive-through customer's fries on the ground and his boss told him to pick them back up before the customer got to the window. This topic is not handled well at all, and while it tries to show by the end of the episode that Granny Jojo is in the wrong for shutting down her son's dreams, which is generally a true statement, you shouldn't stifle your kid's dreams. The family's idea to help Richard accomplish self-worth is to make him do all the stuff in his diary that his mom prevented him from doing, but none of it goes well. He eats shit while skateboarding, riding a kiddie coaster, horseback riding, and bungee jumping. These slapstick gags severely undercut the message, and were seemingly proving his mother right. He is not able to do any of this stuff. No matter matter how hard they try, Richard can't get over his inner demons holding him back. So the night before cheerleader tryouts, Anais gives him a placebo to trick him into believing he can do it, the shrunken head of the first cheerleader, and tells him all he needs to do is kiss it to have the power to be a cheerleading flyer. The next day at the cheerleading tryouts, Richard goes out to do his routine. Mr. Small looks way too into it, by the way. While it might not be going great, he's still really into it until the moment he sees his mother is in the crowd, who shows up to stuff like this to watch people fail to feel better about her own mistakes. Richard says he doesn't need her support because he has his lucky charm, which he points out is just a tennis ball with googly eyes on it. Crushed, Richard begins to give in to the trauma he's inherited until the whole family begins chanting to drown out the voices of his ancestors. Motivated by the chant, he becomes the greatest flyer known to man, scoring 2 10s from the judges, while also replacing the boys' intergenerational trauma with physical trauma. I have a lot of issues with this episode, and like I said earlier, one of them is just how poorly the topic is handled. We can compare it to a similar episode in the original series, Season 2, Episode 19, The Authority. In this episode, Richard tries a number of stupid solutions to the TV remote's batteries being dead, eventually leading to an ER visit after taking a satellite dish to the forehead. Granny Jojo shows up and begins taking over the family, saying Nicole isn't fit to raise them as she begins forcing an overprotective lifestyle onto everyone, eventually scaring them with the dangers of the world so much that they only feel safe sitting on the couch and eating food. All of the kids then turn into little Richards, and it becomes apparent that Granny Jojo's parenting style is what caused his arrested development and inability to problem solve, which in turn is what caused the accident at the beginning of the episode. The moral is that while independence can lead to mistakes and even harm, learning from those mistakes is how we grow as people, rather than remaining sheltered and overprotected. This episode isn't necessarily about generational trauma because there's nothing to suggest that the upbringing Richard received is causing them to end up like he did, and it's not till Granny Jojo steps in that they begin turning into little stupid sausages. This is closer to the concept of sins of the father, or grandmother in this case. Granny Jojo's terrible parenting style is what caused Richard to end up the way he is, but this didn't lead him to raising his kids in a similar way. It stopped with him, while generational trauma is about a cycle of inherited emotions or beliefs that move from one generation to the next. But in the cheerleader, this intergenerational trauma also doesn't go any further than Richard. It's shown that it's apparently been going on since they were cavemen, but it's not actually shown to affect any of the kids. Yet throughout the episode, they're like, gee, we really have to help our dad out so that doesn't happen to us, when there are no signs it's going to affect them. Richard's not known for stifling his kids' dreams, and it's not like they even try to use that at any point in the episode. The other thing I don't like is how they spell it out for you. We're directly lectured in the episode on what intergenerational trauma is and told it's the problem they need to overcome. But then they write an episode where you could remove all the talk of intergenerational trauma and it would probably be better off. You could even leave in the subtext about it and allude to that being the root cause, rather than it just being Granny Jojo is super overprotective. There's also no training either. He just goes to be a cheerleader and is amazing at it by the end of the episode. So here's my rewrite of how this episode could have been good. Richard wanted to be a cheerleader, but his mother wouldn't let him, and the kids decide he should follow his dreams. They practice, invite her to come watch, but she shits on him while saying something along the lines of, "My parents told me not to follow my dreams and I turned out just fine." Before Richard's hard work practicing pays off, he aces the tryouts, and he and his mother have a closing thought on how she failed him the way her parents did her, before cutting away to the boys needing medical attention. Instead, we get a 2-minute lecture on intergenerational trauma, 2 minutes of Richard failing to do random stuff, then 2 minutes of the placebo, before we get to the final scene of the episode and everything is wrapped up, with him magically being good at cheer flying with literally no practice. I give this episode a 5 out of 10 for poor writing. On to episode 9, The Boring. I initially thought this episode was fine, but upon further remembrance, it's another case of the new series reusing stuff we've already seen. We start on the school blacktop as the boys prepare for a relaxing recess, but make sure to avoid Molly, who they don't want to get stuck talking to. Gumball says he heard time actually stand still when you start talking to her before the two head out across the blacktop, tuning out basically everything around them, which leads them to stepping on a mural Tina the T-Rex was making. Because the two weren't listening, they don't know what the mural actually is, and Tina says that at 3 p.m. she's gonna beat them up to teach them a lesson about paying attention to others. We now have to talk about how Tina looks completely different and much worse than she does in the original show. Her texture has far less depth, making her look like a Fortnite building that hasn't loaded in yet. It can be overlooked, but I just had to point it out. The two leave to use the bathroom, but run into Molly and get stuck in a boring conversation with her in the hall, discovering that time time literally does stop when you're talking to her. They then squander this power to pull off stupid pranks, completely forgetting about the 3 p.m. beating. There's also a really stupid joke here where Gumball puts a bunch of random stuff on Principal Brown. Miss Simeon sees and goes, "How did you know I love a man in a sparkling pink cowboy hat, extensions, heart glasses, a bow tie, and holding a baby doll and skateboard?" before they start making out. It's not funny. Also, why did she call him Principal Brown?
Principal Brown?
She's been dating him for who knows how long, and she always calls him by his first name, Nigel.
Nigel, what is going on? Nigel, where were you? Don't you Lucy me, Nigel?
The entire thing is just really weird and out of character for Miss Simeon. 3 p.m. has arrived and Tina is ready to destroy Gumball and Darwin. They tell Molly to continue talking, giving them time to think while Tina's charging. We then get a training montage of them learning karate and forging armor to fight Tina. This next bit was used in the original trailer announcement of the show, where time restarts and the crowd of students are hit with a stink cloud.
Sorry, that's like 100 years worth of BO all released at once.
Maybe we should have showered?
Yeah, but who has the time, you know?
For some reason in the announcement trailer, not only did they change the line, which makes sense for the joke, but Gumball is voiced by someone completely different.
That's like 7 years worth of BO all released at once.
Maybe we should have showered?
Yeah, but who has the time, you know?
Definitely a strange choice. None of their training actually matters, because at the end of the day, Tina is a T-Rex, and the two get stomped on as Molly begins to speak to them again, meaning they'll be permanently stuck under Tina's foot unless they actually listen to what Molly has to say. They force themselves to listen as Molly explains the reason Tina wants to pummel them is because the artwork of hers they ruined was a special dinosaur tradition meant to honor the near extinction of their species, and that they should listen and be more considerate of the people around them. The two apologize to Tina, explaining that thanks to Molly they understand what they did wrong. Because Molly is also a dinosaur, she decides to let them go, and we get a beautiful dinosaur code handshake. The boys begin thanking Molly, who zones out in the same way they were, before she blasts them with the same magic they developed while time was stopped, saying they're too boring and walking away. Now in a vacuum, ignoring a few jokes that just don't land, this episode would be fine. But we aren't in a vacuum. We're trapped in this YouTube video where I analyze the new episodes with the context of having 6 previous seasons. We already did the Molly is boring thing back in season 5 episode 2, the stories. But first, we need a little more lore on who Molly is. In season 3 episode 12, we learn about the Void, a dimension that has some sort of overarching connection to the main universe of Gumball, and that sometimes it decides to erase things it believes were a mistake, including Molly, for being a really boring person. The episode ends with them saving her, while also having their memories of the Void erased entirely. And Molly is brought back as an episode topic in the stories. This entire episode is about how everyone finds the mundane stories Molly tells to be extremely boring, to the point where they'd rather commit suicide by dodgeball than listen to her speak anymore. The boys discover that Molly is actually extremely lonely, and telling stories is her way of trying to be seen by others. They then try to make her the most interesting story possible to have something worth sharing with others, so she'll feel more included. But when she reaches the boys, she tells the story in the most uninteresting way possible, before explaining she figured out it was all set up by them so she'd have a nice story to tell, and at the same time recognizes and thanks them for the effort they put into helping her. Now let's throw all of that out the window and make fun of how boring she is again. That's what this new episode does. We're literally backtracking on a perfectly fine episode and making an entirely new one based around this single joke told in the original.
It's like a superpower. She can distort time and space using only boredom.
The characterization of Darwin also annoys me because in the original episode, Gumball just wants to straight up tell Molly her stories are boring, while Darwin wants to spare her feelings. Gumball has always been a self-absorbed asshole, but Darwin has basically been put on the same level as him, whereas in previous episodes he'd probably be trying to point out how Gumball is in the wrong the entire time. An example would be season 3 episode 29, The Saint. The entire episode is Gumball being annoyed at how positive Alan the Balloon is, as he spends the entire episode trying to break his nice demeanor. This includes Gumball making racist posts on his social media accounts, framing him for cheating on his girlfriend Carmen, and eventually selling his parents into balloon slavery. Alan doesn't break the entire time, and the entire time Darwin isn't on board with any of it, and thinks it's horrible Gumball's even attempting to make Alan break. Yet in this new episode, Darwin is just as dismissive of everyone else as Gumball, because the plot needs the two two to both end up in the same predicament. Previous characterization be damned. And while we're here, let's talk about the subversive ending, where Molly flips the script on Gumball and Darwin before walking off. This is also dumb in my opinion because Molly is not at all characterized to treat people this way. She might be boring, but she's one of the sweetest characters in the show. Just look at her, she's adorable. Going back to the Saint, that episode almost ends with an out of character reaction from Alan, where after everything he's been through, something as simple as Gumball squeaking his feet on the floor makes him blow his lid. As Gumball shuffles away feeling better about himself, knowing he finally made Alan break. This would seem like the perfect place to end the episode if we were gonna ignore Alan's characterization. But no, it's revealed right after that he was only pretending to be mad because he knew that's what would make Gumball happy, and Alan's character remains intact. In this new episode, Molly just does it to do it, which kinda tramples on what little character she's been given. You could have easily done the same exact joke, the same exact way, with Molly thinking that the boys are boring, but it should have just cut to the credits right here. Then you can argue, yeah, she thinks they're boring, but she's still a nice person. This episode gets a solid 5 out of 10. Next, episode 10, The Teacher. We start in the classroom as Miss Simeon begins passing out tests, explaining that budget cuts to the school require them to use toilet paper as paper. Gumball laments the fact that Richwood High School has laptops now, while their school had to sell their calculators. The school being low on funding is new to season 7 and is used in a good handful of episodes. After trying to use his phone as a calculator, it's confiscated by Miss Simeon, and when class ends, she leaves before giving it back. Gumball then sees her taking something out of the trophy cabinet and assumes she's stealing from the school, and that she's probably trying to steal his phone as well. While attempting to confront her, he's knocked out and wakes up in her car, and afraid she'll hurt him, he pretends to be interested in becoming a teacher and wants to see what her life is like. She then beats the shit out of a fingerprint guy named Sal, a known criminal throughout the show, yelling, "Where's my stuff?" which Sal claims was stolen by a guy whose name he doesn't know. Gumball calls the police, who tell him to stay on the line while they track his location. After Sal spots him on the phone, he throws a spoon at him, which has been characterized in the show as a kid-friendly placeholder for a weapon. He passes out from fear, and when he comes to, Sal is tied up in the back seat, saying a big ugly guy with a mullet stole Miss Simeon's stuff. Simeon then drives to the pawn shop to see if the guy sold her stuff there, while bringing the bludgeon-esque object she stole from the school with her, before screaming is heard inside the pawn shop. When she returns, she begins torturing Sal with kids' music, causing him to foam at the mouth as they drive down the highway. Sal says he saw the guy who stole Simeon's stuff in another car before they're rammed by Coach Russo, another reoccurring teacher from the school. Simeon catches up to her and confronts her about stealing school supplies, while Coach rebuts that they aren't on school grounds, and that she has to do what she has to do to make ends meet. They get into a car chase, and when told to jump cars to grab the bag, Sal instead jumps out the window, Assassin's Creeding into a dumpster. Simeon then makes Gumball grab the bag, and the ensuing struggle causes Coach to crash afterwards. Gumball remembers that at least they're being tracked by the police, and tries to keep his cool while Miss Simeon drives them out to a desert cave. We see that the police are in fact tracking the phone, and after it stops moving, they start heading out. By this point, Gumball believes he's about to be beaten to death in a damp cave, so he begins to fight back with a twig, until Miss Simeon reveals the cave is actually where she lives. We then learn the context behind everything that's happened. The thing she took from the trophy cabinet is actually a primeval flute, the sound of which is similar to that of someone being murdered, given to her as a prize in 10th grade for inventing fire. She's very old, by the way, having been a teacher for over 300,000 years. She explains that the school budget is shrinking every year, and that she sold the calculators to buy charging cables from Sal to be used with laptops she bought the kids with her own money. Gumball then asks where the school budget went, and we get a montage of the cops having high-tech robot dogs, fancy helicopters, and other expensive stuff. This is definitely not very sly commentary on over-militarization of police at the expense of schooling. Funding for things like police departments and schools are done differently depending on where you live, but a lot of the money is allocated from the same pool. In my state, schooling is funded in the billions, while adding up the biggest city's police departments doesn't even break a single billion. Miss Simeon says that all she really cares about is making sure none of her students get left behind, and Gumball remembers the police are tracking his phone in the backseat of the car, but when he goes to check it, the phone's not there, and Miss Simeon is pretty certain it was stolen by Sal. We then cut to Sal in his apartment with the phone, before the police bust down the wall with their fancy equipment and begin throwing the expensive robot dogs into the house, breaking them all, before the entire area is seen exploding from out in the desert. Miss Simeon tells Gumball she thinks he'd make a great teacher if he tried, listing off all the ways they're underappreciated, but before she can get to the "despite all that" part of the speech, Gumball has run away and the episode ends. It's not hard to believe that Miss Simeon cares about her students enough to buy them stuff out of her own pocket. But the story to get to this point makes no sense. She was buying cheap chargers from a criminal, but then that transaction was somehow intercepted by the gym coach who wanted to steal the chargers to use as jump ropes. Totally makes sense. I also really didn't like the ending. I thought it'd be funnier if Gumball began to understand Miss Simeon's motivations better and appreciate the time and money she put into helping them succeed as students before the police bust into her cave and arrest her. This episode just felt too all over the place. And the fact the situation was framed as Miss Simeon showing Gumball what it's like being a teacher and the stuff she has to go through, why did she at no point explain what she purchased and what they were chasing down? 5 out of 10. Mid-episode. We're finally over halfway through the season, so if you haven't already, let me know what you think of my analysis so far. Am I being too harsh on a kid's show, or do you think my criticism is fair? And leave a like if you're enjoying. On to episode 11, The App. I alluded to this episode earlier being a decent spot to throw in any Elon Musk criticism, but I assure you, the writing isn't that good. Seconds into the episode, we already have a massive break in continuity. This is the brick phone. The brick phone was introduced in season 2, episode 7. The Phone, and it was last seen in season 2 episode 7, The Phone, because it was blown up by Ocho during a fight. It's been brought into this episode because it's going to be needed as an explosive later on. The joke being it's so old, whenever they try to install new stuff on it, it just about blows up. While completely shitting on old continuity, the episode's plot sees the boys headed to the pawn shop to get Gumball a new phone after it was stolen by Sal in the last episode. The two say they're finally going to join a new social media platform called ClicksApp once they get the new phone, and Nicole notes she saw on Elmore Plus that it's highly addictive. Elmore Plus is supposed to be like their world's Facebook, and ClicksApp is a stand-in for TikTok. After offending their mother by saying she's too old to understand new tech, they're kicked out of the car and have to walk to the pawn shop on their own. On their way there, they run into the hobo, a reoccurring character throughout the show. He's pretty crazy, and it's been alluded to that he used to be rich, and this episode will cement that into his character. He comes out of nowhere and tells the boys to put on a pair of sunglasses, and for some reason this half-decent joke has an audio issue when Gumball says the word "see."
I'll tell you the same thing I told my optician. I'd rather look good than see good. I saw that, and I still look good.
The hobo says the world is corrupted by greed and that the glasses will show them the truth. This next bit is all a reference to They Live, a John Carpenter movie from the 80s about aliens controlling the world through subliminal messages. The boys say all this is old news and that growing up on the internet has made them acutely aware that all media is meant to make them easier to control, before cutting to them getting the new phone and immediately getting on ClicksApp to film something stupid.
And let me slap you on the butt with a moldy tortilla.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
Hobo shows up again to stop them, pointing out how it's turning people into literal zombies. While on the app, they seem fine. He says all the app cares about is stealing people's time, ideas, and soul through its engaging algorithm. This is commentary on TikTok, which itself is detrimental for the health of future generations. And the episode commentates on this while making fun of the stupid trends you've all definitely seen before. Gumball and Darwin decide they won't be joining the app, which pisses off the zombies, forcing them to retreat into the pawn shop. Hobo says the algorithm must be evolving to remove anomalies, and when the boys ask how he knows so much about it, he explains he is the one who created it. We're then shown his backstory as a developer for Elmore Plus, when one day he wrote the most addictive algorithm ever seen, that fostered hatred by spreading misinformation to drive people apart. This part of the jab is definitely targeted at Twitter, or X as no one calls it. After telling his boss the algorithm needed to be destroyed, he was fired, and lost all of his money when he crashed his yacht into his private island. Addicted to the tech billionaire lifestyle, he built another even more addictive algorithm that became ClicksApp. Hobo's plan to stop it is to destroy the cell tower, which will cut off everyone's connection to the app. He sacrifices himself to give them an opening, and they book it to the tower while passing a bunch of viral trends from the past 10 years. The boys use Bricky the brick phone to blow up the tower and make a dramatic escape, but it turns out it didn't work, because a nearby pizza place has free Wi-Fi. As the zombies close in, Nicole swoops in, appearing to save the day, before she too signs up for ClicksApp and turns into a zombie. When all looks lost, the zombified teens are snapped out of their trance when their parents begin joining the app, as they all delete it to avoid the cringe. Hobo shows up after being attacked by the makeup kids to warn that the danger isn't over, but by that point, they don't care, saying it's basically natural at this point for apps to come and go, causing chaos in the process. And that's how the episode ends. This isn't the worst episode, but the writing here was lacking in a lot of ways. The entire sunglasses sunglasses bit was practically random, taking up almost a minute of the episode and having nothing to do with the plot, but to get Hobo involved. I can overlook that though, it's Gumball. It's a random show, random stuff happens. What I can't overlook is the bad writing about Bricky the brick phone. Bricky is gone, reduced to atoms. The only reason it was brought back was to use it to blow up the cell phone tower, and they were pawning it off to afford a new phone and retrieved it when barricaded in the store. They could have very simply written that they grabbed it from the pawn shop, maybe even foreshadow its use by trying to call for help, which blows one of the brick phones up. For those reasons, I give this episode no higher than a 5 out of 10. Up next, episode 12, The Entrance. The episode starts with Tobias inviting everyone to a party, which already reeks of reused plot ideas. His invite to Gumball and Darwin comes with the specific reminder to bring their girlfriends, and they're pretty sure he's just gonna try to steal them at the party. Yet Carrie and Penny have nothing better to do and are happy to go with the boys. Gumball specifically has a vision of what he wants to happen at the party, a fantasy of showing up fashionably late and everyone thinking he is cool and swag. While preparing for the party, Gumball and Darwin discover that literally no one accepted the invite, meaning their fantasy of looking cool at the party could be ruined. Darwin suggests sending gift boxes to all the kids to how do you say this word? Darwin suggests sending gift boxes to the kids to lure them to the house, but upon agreeing on the plan, the two both grow pedo stashes, since it's in fact a really weird and kind of creepy idea. But they then clarify they're doing it in a not creepy mustache way. They open the attic to try to find gifts to give out, and discover a ton of illegally imported goods Richard's deadbeat criminal dad smuggled into the country. Among them is a box of cologne shaped like grenades, probably a reference to this specific bottle in real life. They think it's a good choice but decide to test it before mailing them out, and as they spray it, the room lights up and they both grow massive smiles. They package and ship them out, in the process dropping one which makes Larry smile and start going crazy. We then get a montage of the two going apeshit in the bathroom as they get ready for the party, with a ton of random stuff happening, including a ton of Met Gala references. The drug trip wears off and it turns out that what actually happened was way less sunshine and rainbows, and the entire bathroom is trashed. It reminds me of the video game We Happy Few, and the drug in it called Joy. That game is so bad I want to do a video on it. They realize the party started hours ago and start freaking out before deciding to use more of the cologne before heading there. They run to the party while tripping balls, but get distracted by Gumball being able to fold his tongue into a taco before Darwin bites it. The two argue about whose fault it is, and in the process beat up a bunch of construction worker guys before they decide to order a ride. We then cut to 20 minutes later after the ride has been crashed in front of Tobias's mansion, and then cut back to how exactly they got in the situation, as they ordered a ride, cancelled it, snuck on board, and ordered another ride at Tobias's house. The two argue more about what to do when Tobias reaches them before the police pull up and arrest them for being a public nuisance, and for spreading the cologne around to all the other kids in town. During the arrest, Donut Guy drops a bottle of the cologne, drugging everyone, and this sets off the first guest animated sequence of the new series. The Amazing World of Gumball has a long history of guest animation, and this one was created by California-based graffiti artist Neckface. It's a really cool sequence, which sucks because it's in such a dog-ass episode, and it ends with a cruiser crashing into the police station, where all the previously drugged kids are being held. Then they all bust into a dance party, before we move to Tobias alone in his mansion, reflecting on why he has no friends, before the doorbell rings and a girl we've never seen before arrives for the party. It's then revealed a ton of criminals have shown up to take over, and the episode ends. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, this one is straight awful. I don't even think I can begin to guess what the moral of the episode here is supposed to be. At most, we got light commentary through a few lines about how some people's perceived confidence is just an attempt at masking their insecurities, but it definitely wasn't the point of the episode. Also, writing wise, it doesn't make sense that Tobias somehow didn't get hit with the cologne before the guest animated sequence. He was literally right next to Donut Guy and in front of Gumball and Darwin. The entire episode just isn't very funny either. Joke after joke just doesn't land.
Why?
Because this is all your fault.
And also because it looked inexplicably delicious.
This one gets a 3 out of 10 only because the guest animation was awesome. Now on to episode 13, The Letter. Tied for worst episode in the season. We start in school and Darwin is strutting quite confidently. When Gumball pries, the show steals another older joke in a less funny way.
I have a secret.
You're adopted!
There's something I have to tell you.
You're not my father?
How did you guess?
Darwin's secret is that he wrote a love letter for his girlfriend Carrie and plans to leave it in her locker today. After slipping it into the locker, Penny and Carrie arrive, and Gumball has some uncharacteristic PDA with his girlfriend, which is juxtaposed by Darwin and Carrie having very little lovey-dovey vibes in their greeting. Penny then apologizes, saying she knows Carrie hates when people show affection, and Carrie says that's why her and Darwin work so well, because he's not some pile of affectionate mush. I hate all of this already. When I first saw Carrie's reaction, my guess was this would be some sort of sour grapes moment, with her pretending she doesn't like affection because Darwin isn't as affectionate as she likes. They actually go completely the opposite direction and retcon all ghosts to hate the words I love you, because the underworld is apparently devoid of love, and if ghosts ever hear the words I love you, the rage will make them want to eat your face. This completely retcons how Carrie has shown affection in the past, including an entire emotional moment about finally being reunited with her father, who was a human who fucked a ghost, creating Carrie, suffering as a cursed spirit until Gumball and Darwin broke that curse, returning him to his human form and reuniting with Carrie after he eats shit and dies moments later. You can technically argue that the words I love you were never said in that context, but there was definitely affection and love in these moments, and others. For instance, in The Matchmaker, Carrie admits she likes Darwin and was sabotaging Gumball's attempts to hook him up with Terry. She then helps make a love potion, which requires something belonging to both Darwin and Terry, as well as the tears of someone who loves Darwin. Her tears, because she loves Darwin. And in the episode The Drama, Carrie literally directly says Darwin has all the things she loves in a guy. Now the show is saying that even the mention of the words I love you sends Carrie on a mad rage using Gumball's body, and the plot of the episode follows the boys' attempts to get the love letter back to destroy it. The first hurdle being the letter is inside a living backpack that's defensive of Carrie's stuff. It eats Gumball, but he escapes by outgrossing it until it throws him up. The next problem is the letter being indestructible because Darwin wrote it on paper he tore out of a cursed notebook Carrie gave him for Valentine's Day. Which just begs the question, how did he tear the page out in the first place if the letter is too strong to tear? The notebook is also apparently a spell book for some reason, which includes a spell that conjures IKEA furniture and a love spell. We've already been shown cursed spells in the mirror, and they all require some sort of price to pay, but now they don't all of a sudden?
It's lucky I can't possibly love you more than I already do, cause you really look like a snack right now.
The two try to toss the note into a passing garbage truck, but instead it lands in Hector the Giant's backpack. And later in class, Gumball starts talking to Darwin about how dating a giant might be better than dating a ghost who'll eat your face off if you say I love you, before then saying a blatant butt sex joke about how Darwin needs to make sure he's not the bottom in that scenario. I hate this episode. Hector says he found Darwin's letter and hands it back to him, and he celebrates by throwing ass on his desk. Miss Simeon notices, however, and makes him read the letter off in front of the class. Darwin comes to terms with the fact he's probably going to get his face eaten, but loves Carrie enough to see it through. He quickly realizes the note Hector gave him is actually a response to the original letter. As Hector explains, he's not romantically interested in him, and the PS being from his witch mother telling Darwin to never send his son a cursed letter again. Darwin begins to relax as Carrie scowls, flying out of the room in a rage and transforming the school into something out of a horror movie. He finds Carrie scolding on the blacktop as she calls him a Lothario for trying to cheat on her.
What's a Lothario?
It's a womanizer from a play.
Huh.
I actually liked this joke. It was really funny to just cut away from the dramatic tone and everything.
Harry, I'm not any of those things. I don't care about Hector. I'm not even Canadian.
What the fuck does this even mean? What sort of jab are they trying to take at Canadians? Let me know in the comments if you get the joke here, because I had to assemble the council and even they didn't understand what the fuck was going on. Carrie questions what the letter meant, and he explains he wrote her a letter before learning about the whole ghost eating face thing. Darwin decides that instead of telling Carrie he loves her, he'll instead ask for her to eat his face because of how much he loves her. Carrie then flies right into Gumball, stealing his body like earlier in the episode, and proceeds to make out with him using his own brother's body. This is someone's fetish. Which one of you is a brother fucker? Show yourself, you demon. Carrie thanks Darwin for meeting her in the middle, and the two embrace as the sky returns to normal. The episode ends with Gumball monologuing about how they're gonna need to find a better solution to this, because he doesn't really want to fuck his brother on their wedding day. This entire episode is dog shit. Retconning ghosts to hate the words I love you or affection in general was a terrible writing decision that spits on practically every major Carrie episode previously released. Another issue issue is Carrie's jealousy about Darwin cheating being the final big conflict in the episode. When 6 episodes ago, you literally left him to date Ocho, and neither of them saw it as a big deal. This is even more questionable since Carrie is a ghost, and therefore couldn't touch the crystal to fall in love with whoever Mr. Small said she was fated to be with. Or she can touch the crystal like she touches plenty of other things in the show, like holding Darwin's hand or kissing him on the lips. That's right, she literally can touch stuff when she feels like it, including Darwin, and has done it plenty of times. Which brings us to the next issue. Previously, the possession was so Carrie could experience eating food, something she's not able to do as a ghost, yet still being shown to interact with physical objects when she wants. Darwin and her would even go out on dates where she'd possess him to eat food as well. There's been plenty of retconning in the show. For instance, the stated continent Elmore is in used to be Europe, but now it's said to take place in the US. Carrie has also been retconned to have been born a ghost, while previously stating she missed having a body. But even this could be interpreted to mean she at some point got access to a body before losing it. But we have been shown that she doesn't need a body to kiss Darwin, making this entire thing just disgusting to watch. The other problem I have is it's not played off as being gross. It's meant to be a touching moment. Gumball and Darwin have kissed each other on the lips before, but they didn't know that's what happened and thought they were actually kissing their girlfriends. It's played off as being awkward and gross, while the boys are unaware they kissed each other and are happy they got their first kiss from girls. This is a 3-second long kiss. As the storm stops, the music turns all soft, and the two start discussing their relationship before hugging. I hate it. 0 out of 10, get me out of here. Next up, episode 14, The Gut. We start with the boys cleaning out the old food in the fridge, while Richard is dozing off at Anais explaining her invention. The boys drop some old food on the floor, and Richard instinctually jumps into action and eats it, before explaining the code he lives by, the 5-second rule. I'm sure you've heard of the 5-second rule. Basically, by law, no bacteria is allowed to touch food if it's not been on the floor for more than 5 seconds, meaning it's still good to pick up and eat. This rule does not include liquids or non-Newtonian fluids. The boys are fascinated by this and begin throwing more food on the floor while Anais tries to explain that her device gives organic matter the ability to communicate.
I have a question for God. Why?
This leads the boys to trying it on a hot dog, which falls on the floor, causing Richard to immediately suck it and the device into his gut. The device then merges with Richard's gut lining, giving it the ability to speak. His gut is far smarter than he is, due to all the digestive challenges it's been through, and Anais immediately gets along with it, while Richard begins to feel like he's going to take Anais away from him, because he's not as smart and isn't able to relate to Anais in the same way. The gut starts showing ulterior motives as he begins sucking the life out of Richard. He even removes all the food from the house while he was napping, to prevent him from eating any more garbage. Richard goes for the fungus-covered yogurt left in the back of the fridge, and the two struggle in the kitchen, until Anais calls for them. We cut to the 3 painting in the living room, Richard looking worse for wear. The gut begins overanalyzing Anais' artwork while shitting on Richard's painting of the 2 of them. The gut painted nothing, trying to make a joke with Anais about how it represents her family's lack of intelligence, which makes her pretty uncomfortable. This is when the gut finally takes over and tries to recruit Anais to join him in creating more devices to transform humanity into gut people. When she refuses, he attacks them with belly button lint, forcing the kids to barricade themselves in the bathroom. They deduce that their father's weakness came from the fact he hadn't eaten since the gut came to life, so they head to the fridge to get some food, only to find it empty, the same yogurt cup being all that's left. The boys hold off the gut while Anais tries to pry the yogurt out of the fridge, until the gut develops laser vision out of Richard's stomach acid. Anais finally gets the yogurt out, but the gut takes it away and throws it on the floor, which was Anais' plan all along, as Richard comes to and immediately sucks up the moldy yogurt off the floor. Richard comes to, and Anais apologizes for siding with the gut over her own dad, finding it tempting to hang out with someone super smart. Richard says the gut couldn't have been that smart if it wasn't smart enough to love his kids, before he starts violently projectile vomiting into the sink.
Hey guys, I I brought home dinner.
I could eat.
Now this episode was something else. It was weird, it was extremely gross, and it gets an 8 out of 10 from me. It's hard to go wrong with Richard episodes. The problem is, half the time I can't come out of it with a decent moral. Usually because the stories tend to be more about overcoming some sort of challenge that's specific to Richard's character. Anything from trying to remember something by eating a memory mukbang, to trying to eat one burger from every burger place in town in a single day. Maybe these episodes are better because there are no strong moral messages being pushed. Or maybe it's just my soft spot for Richard. Either way, I'm sticking with 8 out of 10. On to episode 15, The Wrinkle. The episode starts with Anais at the hospital getting checked out for having a wrinkle despite being only 4 years old. The cause of the premature aging appears to be Anais's stress over the well-being of her family, which is proven out by Richard getting stuck in an MRI machine 2 seconds later. The rest of the episode sees the family following the plans laid out by Anais to make sure they're prepared for the future, in an attempt to keep her from stressing out. This premise is very similar to another episode from the original series, season 6, episode 15, The Brain, where Anais has been facepalming so much at her family's stupidity, she's at risk of permanent brain damage. The premise is similar but different enough to not lose too many points. What I find annoying, however, is the characterization Anais gives to her role in the family's shenanigans when they're leaving the hospital, claiming she's the one who's always making sure the family is okay.
So we're a bit prone to trouble. That shouldn't stress you out. We always come out okay.
Yeah, because I make sure you do.
When back in episode 2 of this same season, she says Nicole is always saving them.
We've forgotten who usually gets us out of a mess like this. Mom!
Which is then reinforced in episode 6 when Nicole is shown to fix everything while Anais sits there being a 4-year-old. The rest of the episode shows the outcome of Anais's plans for the family. Darwin goes to a training camp to turn him into a weapon, so no one can take advantage of him in the future. This sequence is just amazing. We watch him smile through a bunch of stuff until he earns a mask, and the leader of the organization tells him that once he takes the mask off, he'll be one of them. And the other half of the sequence is him wearing the mask, so we can't actually see his reaction to anything happening. When he gets to the final test of killing a puppy, it's revealed he hasn't changed a single bit, and is just as positive as when he walked in. And he practically rewrites the entire organization's ideology simply by being him. After this fails, Anais's wrinkles get worse, and next she moves on to Gumball, who heads to a lawyer's office, because Anais's only contingency for him was to have a really good lawyer because he always gets into trouble. The lawyer explains that with everything he's been called on by the age of 12, he'd have over 400 life sentences if he was an adult, and that the clock is ticking for him to get his shit together. When Gumball asks what he should do, the lawyer advises him to just do nothing, since everything he does leads to crime. This is when the criminals from the Darwin training montage burst in to find and steal a list of witnesses, while also taking a page out of Darwin's book by lightening up their appearance. Through a series of events started by Gumball doing nothing, the safe holding the witnesses' names is uncovered and opened. When the police get there, the lawyer knows she can't convince anyone of what happened and tells Donut Guy to just arrest her, as Anais's wrinkles worsen. Next on the list is Richard and Nicole's retirement. Anais buying them an animal sanctuary so they have plenty to do to not get bored, and to keep Nicole from getting too annoyed with Richard's habits after she stops working. This immediately begins to fail as the two begin arguing about how little Richard actually deserves to feel happy about retirement when he didn't do anything all day anyways. I'm not a huge fan of this argument in particular because we've already had an entire episode about Richard wanting to feel more appreciated with how much he does. Season 5 episode 34, The Deal. Nicole gets a raise and is named Employee of the Month, and as she proudly flaunts her achievement, Richard gets up the strength to confront her about how unappreciated he feels at what he does around the house while she's gone. Nicole thinks his parenting style is horrible, but despite his unconventional techniques, he's able to take care of the kids in a fairly effective way while she's out being the breadwinner. Back in the current episode, the argument doesn't last long before Richard sets off a bunch of fireworks, destroying the sanctuary with a stampede, and Nicole attacks him in anger, while Anais's wrinkles make her look like a 3D printed walnut. Back at the hospital, the family try and convince Anais to look at the situation differently, and that mistakes are what make life interesting. We then get one of the best songs in the series in my opinion, Leap Before I Look, animated in the style of drawings in a kid's notebook. The song explains that if it wasn't for the leaps their family took through life, they wouldn't have ended up the family they are today. Darwin's bond with Gumball was so strong he traveled across the wilderness and grew legs and lungs to make it back to him. If he hadn't taken that leap, he'd still just be a fish in the ocean. Nicole took a leap when she chose to be with Richard instead of following the life her parents had pre-planned for her. And if she didn't, she would have probably taken over the world and become a despotic ruler. There are no credits to a guest animator on the wiki for this sequence, and if anyone updates this info, I'll throw in a comment or the description. It's then revealed that in the real world, the family muttered a song, then jumped out the fucking window. Anais says she understands what the song meant and will stop bailing the entire family out of their problems, as they all wrinkle knowing they have to handle stuff themselves. I definitely put this in my top 5 episodes of the new series, despite the handful of problems I have. Most of the stuff was heavily outweighed by the Darwin training sequence, and the animated song being so cute. I give this one a solid 9 out of 10. On to episode 16, The Gourmet. We start the episode in the school cafeteria, where we get a good look at Rocky Robinson, a reoccurring character from the original series. He works at the school as the bus driver, lunch lady, janitor, and general repairman. Rocky looks insanely different in the new series, his hair being much shorter. Major downgrade on the same scale as Tina in my opinion. Gumball is annoyed they have to eat the same thing every day at school, and becomes infatuated by the gourmet truffle mac and cheese Masami's chef made her. Masami is another reoccurring character throughout the show, characterized as a spoiled rich girl who can be a little out of touch with the rest of her classmates. And her family has a long history with Gumball's mother, who works for Masami's father, Mr. Yoshida, at the Rainbow Factory, and whose mother, Yuki Yoshida, is an old friend turned rival from her martial art days. Gumball first tries to scratch his mac and cheese itch by having his mother make some, but it's not as appetizing as the gourmet stuff Masami's chef makes. Nicole says if Gumball wants to eat like the Yoshidas, maybe he should go live with them, and that's the plot of the episode, as Gumball attempts to become a Yoshida to get the mac and cheese. Like I said a second ago, Yuki Yoshida is Nicole's old friend turned rival, introduced in season 4 episode 37, The Fury. We get backstory on Yuki and Nicole being friends during training, but after Nicole beats Yuki at a tournament, she left in disgrace and went to Japan to continue her training. She returns to Elmore and begins tormenting Nicole, trying to instigate the fight she's been preparing for. When the fight does happen, Nicole beats Yuki, and the two eventually have to work together to save their children. They make up afterwards, Yuki apologizing and admitting she was jealous of Nicole. And by the end of the episode, everything seems pretty resolved between the two. But in this new episode, it's hand-waved by a single line.
If you think one legendary overblown anime fight is going to repair a simple misunderstanding, then you know nothing about mothers.
And their feud continues because it needs to for conflict later in the episode. Miss Yoshida is willing to take Gumball in if it means getting a one-up on Nicole, and we get a training montage where she teaches him how to be a rich, snotty person like they are. The montage starts with Gumball being told to use the house controller app to pick out an outfit that exudes confidence, and ends with him declaring that none of the outfits are good enough and that he needs a whole new wardrobe, which was the correct answer, leading Yuki to believe that Gumball is finally one of them. Later on, the front door rings and Nicole arrives to find Gumball. They make a reference to the first fight, but Nicole says she's not doing all that again and walks past Yuki. In the dining hall, Gumball is finally about to receive the mac and cheese he's been after before his mother steps in and asks what he's doing. Yuki says Gumball has shown an appreciation for the finer things in life, which Nicole highly doubts, knowing her son. She's proven right when Gumball loses it trying to get his hands on the mac and cheese.
This sounds expensive.
And the two are kicked out of the house. Yuki saying once a Watterson, always a Watterson. Gumball apologizes for running off to her rival's house over some stupid mac and cheese, which he clearly proved he's not good enough for. But Nicole explains that just because they don't have what the Yoshidas have, doesn't mean that they're any less deserving of it. The two then use the house's app to destroy the dining room, as the butler and personal chef quit and offer Gumball and Nicole the mac and cheese if they can get a ride home. The closest wrap-up moral for this episode I could think of is that being yourself is more important than trying to fit in with those who don't truly care about you. It wasn't the funniest episode, and they completely walked back the previous conclusion that ended with Yuki and Nicole making up. With all this in mind, I can't give it any higher than a 5 out of 10. Next is episode 17, The Pool. The episode starts on a day so hot, the ice cream trucks are literally melting. We get a new broadcast saying global warming is causing the summer temperatures to reach higher and higher, and the boys are in the backyard trying to find a way to cool off. While the girls have the situation handled, concealed in the grocery store freezer aisle. The boys find a shimmer of hope through their neighbor Mr. Robinson's AC. Mr. Robinson has been a long-standing side character in the show, a grumpy old man in retirement who's married to Miss Robinson, the embodiment of evil itself. Realizing the Wattersons are mooching off his AC, he attempts to use his phone to close the window, but because he's a boomer, he can't figure it out, eventually revealing a pool hidden underneath his lawn. Now this is a retcon. Mr. Robinson is very much a fan of his yard, but it's a decently done retcon. Oh look, he hit a switch revealing a secret pool is definitely better than just making a pool be there out of nowhere. The rest of the episode sees the Watterson boys attempting to use the pool through any means possible. They first attempt to ask nicely, using Google Translate to talk to Miss Robinson, since she only communicates by saying meme. She says her husband already said no, and Richard asks her to think of the children. This appears to work until the conversation is subverted by her giving them concrete shoes to drown in the pool. I assure you, it's not very funny. The joke goes, I suppose you can use the pool when my husband takes his nap. I'll even add something that'll cool you off for good. Bam, the concrete shoes. Not your best work, guys. Their next plan is to make Mr. Watterson watch as they suffer in the heat, which obviously doesn't work because he likes watching them suffer. The third plan is to dig a hole to the pool underground, which is a stupid plan for obvious reasons, but it is a Richard idea, so I'm not going to take away any points there. The pool drains into the tunnel and the boys are sent bursting out into the backyard covered in mud. Mr. Robinson heard the noise and goes to check what happened, but Richard heads around front to distract him at the door. He apologizes for harassing Mr. Robinson, explaining he just wants his kids to have everything they need. Mr. Robinson then begins crying, saying he understands, explaining the real reason he didn't want them to use the pool is because the person he built it for never got to swim in it. Before we move on, I need to say I just despise how they've chosen to characterize Mr. Robinson here. He absolutely hates Richard, and the two had a feud that got them placed under house arrest. I don't think he'd immediately spill his guts to his mortal enemy. We get backstory about Mr. Robinson spending his entire life working hard for his son Rocky, while neglecting to actually spend any time with him. He says he built the pool to buy Rocky back, but kicked him out of the house before it was finished, because Rocky didn't like that he made all his money in the pesticide business because it was hurting the environment. Also, they stole this joke from a previous episode. The boys find Rocky in the melted ice cream truck and bring him to Mr. Robinson, saying he'd love to go swimming. They misunderstood Richard telling them to fix the pool with telling them to fix Mr. Robinson's relationship with his son. The three frantically try to fill the hole while Mr. Robinson is getting ready to go swimming with his son, but nothing they try works. By the time Mr. Robinson has made it outside, the pool looks pristine, when in reality, the boys' final resort was to just paper mache over the entire pool to hide the fact there wasn't any water. Mr. Robinson insists the boys join them, and the episode ends with them all injured, laying at the bottom of the empty pool. This wasn't the worst episode, but it wasn't the best either. There were a crazy amount of jokes that didn't land, and I thought the way that both Miss Robinson and Mr. Robinson were handled kinda sucked. They already know from experience that Miss Robinson is an absolute demon, and the fake out just isn't really well done. I also stand by everything I said about Mr. Robinson crying about his problems to Richard, while he has been shown in the past to care about his son Rocky, and was excited to hear when he got a soul-sucking corporate job like he once had. I don't think he'd share any of this with the deadbeat neighbor he hates. But because I did like the backstory segment, and this episode did feel like something we'd see in the original series, I'll give it a 6 out of 10 for trying. Next up is episode 18, The Portrait. The episode starts with a sequence of Nicole getting ready before she answers the door. Larry's arrived to take the family's photo. The kids are on the couch trying to help Richard not blink, and Gumball asks why they need a new photo anyway. Nicole points out how the current family picture on the wall is a weird looking painting, as well as the family's inability to take decent photos in the past. All she wants is one nice picture of the family, so they all get in position. Look at Richard's massive lips. Granny Jojo has arrived, ready for the family photo, having read about it in Richard's weekly newsletter. Nicole agrees because Granny Jojo is technically family, but then she immediately invites her boyfriend Louie to also join the photo. Granny Jojo also brought along a bunch of stuff from her basement to dump on the family, which includes a weird looking box that immediately catches the kid's eye. Nicole is quite irritated by this point, but gets everyone into position for the photo.
What was that? You gotta
be kidding me.
Nicole's parents have arrived, having also read Richard's newsletter, to join the family photo. Her mother also announces that after 40 years of being married to her father, she's divorcing him to date her yoga instructor, who's younger than Nicole, and I hate every second of it. I'm not sure where this trope of flaunting the new boyfriend in a failing marriage comes from, but it's horrendous to watch and makes me want to die. They all pile in for the photo as the kids get distracted by the box, and Nicole's father threatens to fight his wife's boyfriend. As Larry prepares to take the picture, and this time it's Frankie, Richard's deadbeat con artist father, who's out of jail, dating his parole officer, and has come to join in on the family photo. There's also a pretty good joke here about Frankie getting a tattoo of Richard.
Oh, it looks just like me, Dad.
By this point, the kids are doing rituals around the box, while Granny, Jojo, and Louie bet on who's gonna win the brawl that just started. The fight leads to the camera going off, and Richard falls over, destroying the weird box, which explodes into a cloud of ashes. Granny Jojo realizes the box was her great Uncle Howard's barbecue pit ashes. Why was this specifically in a crazy looking box in her basement? Frankie recognizes Nicole is having a hard time handling the situation and decides to help mediate using the skills he's learned in prison, scaring the family into line while also ordering them outside for the picture. Nicole notices Larry is missing, and Frankie says he moved on to his next job while leaving a camera for them to use, and offers to take the picture himself, which now also includes his parole officer. Nicole believes Frankie should be in the photo as well, but he argues that after everything he's done in the past, which includes trying to steal their house, he needs to earn their trust, and he'll do so by helping her take the perfect family photo. He backs up until he can get everyone in, but instead of taking the photo, he steals a car. The parole officer decides to frame the family to avoid getting in trouble, and the police swat the photo shoot, tackling everyone in sight. The Wattersons barricade themselves inside the house, and Nicole emotionally explains she just wanted one normal thing within their house of chaos. The whole family begins crying, not just over her words, but because a police gas canister has spawned in the room. Seriously guys, lazy writing, come on. Richard grabbed the camera before the police swarmed them, so they barricade the door to take the photo, discovering Larry bound under the couch. They all get ready for the photo as the cops break down the door, and the camera goes off as they're arrested. Later, the cops let everyone go, not because they discovered the parole officer, who is now the chief of police for some reason, was lying, but because Donut Guy likes reading Richard's newsletter. They get the broken camera back as well, and from it, Nicole picks out what she believes is the perfect picture of the family, ignoring the fact that they're surrounded by chaos. And the episode ends with Nicole deciding to put the old picture back up instead. I want to like this episode so bad, but there's just too much bad writing. The premise is fine, but the conflict of relatives is brought on by Richard's never heard of newsletter, notifying everyone of the photo shoot. It's totally fine to pull stuff like this out of your ass if it fits within the realm of characterization. What's not okay to do is ignore characterization when you pull shit out of your ass. I can believe Granny Jojo would look at her son's newsletter because she likes to butt into Nicole's family. I can believe Richard's deadbeat dad Frankie would read it in hopes of finding a new opportunity to scam the family. I do not believe Nicole's parents, the Senecourts, would at all care to look at the newsletter of their daughter's fat, jobless husband that they hate so much they literally told him this to his face while having another suitor ready for their daughter outside. Another problem was the box. This was a decently set up piece of conflict brought in by Granny Jojo, and she's been shown in the past to dump random stuff on the family before. But you're telling me the super fancy and mysterious box was made to hold the ashes of her great uncle's barbecue pit? A device that was probably invented way after this old lady's great uncle died? Terrible payoff. Another jab at the cops being incompetent? Fair game. They've been characterized as such for the entirety of the show's history. But why would the random parole officer become chief of police all of a sudden? Do you see what I mean? This episode has the potential to be great, and the premise feels like something we see out of Gumball, but it's just written terribly. For that, I gotta give this potential 9 out of 10 episode a 4 out of 10 instead. On to episode 19, The Climb. I've literally alluded to this one since the start because it's one of the worst episodes in the season. We begin in gym class as everyone's excited that today's activity will be climbing the rock wall. Everyone except Gumball. There don't appear to be any rules, so everyone uses whatever abilities they can to get to the top, all while Gumball stares in fear. By this point, watching it my first time, my assumption was that Gumball was going to be made afraid of heights, something that hasn't very explicitly been stated but would still be in the realm of possibility for his character. Instead, we get a flashback of him doing a great job climbing the wall until the top anchor breaks off. So by this point, I'm thinking what's going to happen is Gumball is going to fall and get hurt, developing some sort of PTSD from it. What actually happens is the anchor pulls his pants off and everyone begins laughing at him, at Gumball, because his pants came off. I'm going to crash the fuck out. This is Gumball Christopher Watterson. In this same season, we had an entire episode about how you should love yourself, and your butt specifically. He wrote an entire poem about how awesome his ass is. He has literally shown up to school naked before, his ass completely hanging out. The episode gets a 0 out of 10 for this alone. The entire premise goes against previous characterization. Gumball is the last person who'd be concerned about his ass cheeks hanging out, considering he literally walked home naked with nothing but a bag on his head. Meanwhile, he still has his underwear on in this traumatic moment. They try to write off this inconsistency in character by saying it was different this time, because he was stuck up there for hours. I'm not buying it, and from this point on, I was just completely disinterested in this episode. The rest of the episode sees Gumball attempting to get over his wall climbing trauma. They first try to start on a toddler toy, but it takes him back to the incident. Their next idea is to have Anais create a mech for him to climb the wall in. This doesn't work either, and the moment he touches the wall, he flashes back again. The robot malfunctions and starts hurting everyone, so of course the military buys the idea off the school. Mr. Small then gives it a shot with chakra bongo therapy that Gumball finds so boring, it brings him to a near-death experience on a mountain. He talks to his pair of pants, which tell him he needs to drop the past and get over his trauma. He interprets this as meaning he needs to completely drop his pants and underwear, and he climbs the wall with his ass cheeks and everything hanging out. Principal Brown says a line about how they're all probably going to get fired for this, and the episode ends. Very straightforward episode, completely stupid for reasons of bad characterization, and therefore 0 out of 10. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. We finally reach episode 20, the Amadain, apparently the highest rated episode of the season. We start the episode at Penny's house as she opens the garage. Gumball hides across the street, making her promise her parents aren't home. I've been there, buddy. He's very averse to ever coming back to the Fitzgeralds because every time he's been there, he's gotten into some sort of insane drama. Like the time he showed up for Tarantula's funeral, or when her family made him the deciding voice on the issue of their shells, and Penny's choice to break out of hers after it cracked. It turns out Penny was lying. It's her grandmother's 80th birthday, and the entire family is coming over to celebrate. Her father Patrick says that their grandmother thinks anything not made of wood is evil, and they don't even use modern toilets. He doesn't want her to have another episode and asks Penny why she brought her Amadain boyfriend. She goes on a monologue about how Gumball was the only person who supported her when she made the decision to come out of her shell, and he's going to help her stand up to the rest of the family. Gumball was already about to leave, but the rest of the family arrives, so Patrick closes the garage and tells them to both put on shells. Penny still having her shell is fine, but it's never explained whose shell this was. It could very well belong to Patrick, maybe from when he was Gumball's age, but I can already see the fan theories about a secret dead brother or something. Penny refuses to put the shell on while Gumball immediately goes along with it. He argues that she tricked him into coming anyways, so she needs to help him get through the evening smoothly. Penny says history doesn't look kindly on traitors, referring to Gumball siding with her father, as if she didn't trick him into coming in the first place. They all head to the backyard, to what looks like some sort of Germanic or Celtic pagan party. Whatever it is, it's very much giving off Pottsfield. Gumball is giving off Pablo for some reason as well. I really can't put my finger on why. The rest of the episode sees Gumball trying to interact with the Fitzgeralds' weird family, all while being sabotaged by Penny, who's upset he didn't have her back about the shells. She tells him he needs to greet her grandmother by blowing a raspberry into her side, which almost leads to conflict. looked, until Patrick de-escalates, explaining that Gumball is just an Amadain from Penny's school. We get a montage of Gumball trying to fit in and or being completely sabotaged. There's also a weird member of the family who has a realistic looking mouth. Some of the family members beat him like a piñata. It's a whole ordeal, and when he's finally had enough, he runs off to the bathroom. Gumball throws off the shell and starts complaining in the mirror about the situation he's gotten himself into, before he notices Grandma on the toilet. This leads to a one-sided confrontation where Gumball admits to Grandma that Penny's come out of her shell and that he unapologetically supports her. Grandma doesn't respond and leaves the bathroom, and Gumball tells Penny he stood up for her. They hear the music stop outside and look out the window, where the entire squad is staring him down. This triggers both Gumball's fight and flight response before Penny has a chance to stop him. He tries to escape the house, running into different creepy family members before trying to run out through the garage. They reuse a rolling head joke, but with way worse math. He takes out 2 family members and ducks under the garage door, where he's intercepted by the weird mouth guy, who sacks him. Brought back into the backyard, Grandma says that he has a lot of nerve standing up to her and has chosen to show her family's true nature. They all split out of their shells into different creatures similar to Penny, as she winks at Gumball. It turns out they were all in on this or something. It's not made very clear. At the very least, Penny knew what was going on, I think. Okay, so it's really not clear. Let's go through the timeline so you can see what I mean. Gumball was tricked into coming by Penny, and Patrick seemed like he wasn't happy about it, unless he was joking, and unless she was joking here too. But we know she wasn't joking because her shape is tied to her true emotions, which means she was genuinely pissed off that Gumball wanted her to go back in her shell. Understandable. So does this mean that if he didn't tell her to go back in her shell, none of this stuff would have happened? And if that's the case, why did Patrick make a big deal about putting them both into shells if he was also in on it? This makes me think that Grandma and the rest of the family weren't in on it and didn't know Penny came out of her shell. Did Penny know this would be their reaction to Gumball spilling the beans to Grandma? They would need to be in on it for this reaction. That means Penny put Gumball through all of this as a prank, which at no point looked like it would end. And we learned an Amadain is a fool, so the whole family thought he was an idiot and were making fun of him on purpose. Gumball was practically ready to run away before he accidentally ran into Grandma in the bathroom and stood up for Penny. If he didn't stand up for Penny, would they still have showed him their true forms? I'm super confused, and if any of you watching have a better explanation for what the hell is going on here, please let me know in the comments. I am truly stumped. Grandma says they wear their shells out of tradition, but took them off to show Gumball and Penny that they're welcome in their family despite their differences. Gumball then makes a scene about how nothing will make him join their family after what he's been through, before we cut to karaoke and everything is fine. This episode was very confusing, but I know exactly why it has high ratings. We got to see the entire Fitzgerald extended family out of their shells, including Patrick, who's been steadfast in his belief their shells are necessary to protect them. I'm pretty convinced this is a retconning of the shells as far as we understand them to this point, and I have some issues with it. In Season 3, Episode 20, The Shell, Gumball headbutts Penny during a school play, cracking her shell. She explains that inside is the true her, and gets into an argument with her dad about how they've spent their entire lives inside of their shells, hiding away from their true selves. When Penny finally makes the decision to come out of her shell, we learn what she truly looks like, but that she's also some sort of shape-shifting creature, and that her form is tied to her emotions. It's pretty much implied in this episode that the family has never come out of their shells, else Patrick wouldn't have reacted the way he did to seeing her.
What have you done? You've turned her into a freak.
A freakishly beautiful young lady.
You turned my daughter into a monster.
Truck of prettiness?
It's also never clarified if all of them shapeshift based on their emotions. In Season 6, Episode 2, The Transformation, Gumball is told to make the decision on whether Penny should go back in her shell, or if her family should come out of their shells. Originally, it appeared her shell was destroyed when she broke out, but it's within reason to suggest they're able to go back into their shells if they want, since that's what Patrick wants Penny to do in this episode. By the end of the episode, they realize arguing the same point over and over with someone who disagrees with you gets you nowhere, and they agree to disagree and move on. But it's still pretty much implied that the Fitzgerald family has never left their shells, and Penny was the first to do so. But now the entire family is shown to be able to leave their shells and put them back on at will. It's just a bit of a stretch in my opinion. I might feel different if this was also a surprise to Penny as well, if the entire family decided to surprise her and show that they accept her despite the differences they have, but she's in on it too. See the wink? That means she knew what was gonna happen. I felt like this episode episode was a mess in terms of writing, but it played out just about as well as you could expect for Gumball showing up at Penny's house. So I give it a solid 7 out of 10, because I can admit it was pretty cool seeing the whole family raw dogging it. With that, we've gone through every single episode of the new season, and hopefully you understand why I feel like it was a complete mess. But there's another big issue I have involving a character we didn't see return, Rob. Rob started out as a minor background character who was eventually erased by the universe the same way Molly was. You can even see him in the void if you're paying attention. Later on in the show, the boys discover a weird one-eyed person has secretly been living in a basement room they were unaware of. It's revealed this strange looking person is Rob, and when the boys went to save Molly, he clung on to the van to escape, but was disfigured in the process. From then on, he decided to be Gumball's nemesis, angry that he ended up the way he is. The original series finale showed Rob posing as the school's superintendent as he tried to convert all the wacky characters of the school into more normal looking humanoids. They eventually foiled this plan and knock him out before he can explain what he was doing. And when he comes to, he says it was the only way for them to escape to the other place before the world was destroyed. The ground opens up into the void and he falls inside, as we get a freeze frame and the episode ends. This was apparently a setup for the Amazing World of Gumball movie that got set aside. But without knowing that, I always interpreted the ending to be a meta joke on the show being over. The void itself was already super meta, and there's a whole episode where the world glitches out because the TV reception that day was spotty. The episode ending with the boys realizing they're in a TV show. Rob was trying to change the show into something else to keep it from ending, but failed, so it was all devoured by the void. Obviously, the show is back now, so that wasn't the case, but what about Rob? He made no appearance, he wasn't mentioned. I thought maybe a new big bad would be the Potato Head Man, but they literally only wrote him in to kill off a character that could have affected the status quo by firing Principal Brown. Is Rob lost to the void? Possibly. If that's the case, that would really suck, because they obviously weren't done with his character, so hopefully he does come back one day. We also had zero mention of Chanex, the evil megacorp in the original show. They were shown to own basically everything in Elmore, including Joyful Burger, which was retconned in the new series to be owned by Bilderberger. They also owned Food and Stuff, which was the name of the grocery store in the original series, and it's now been changed to Elmore Shopping. I was really excited for this new series, and it was just super disappointing to see how much stuff was reused from previous episodes, and how many terrible writing decisions were made. I really hope this first season was just a fluke and that they can pick it up in the next one. One massive problem that needs to be handled though is the audio quality. Every single one of these was terrible to watch because of how bad the audio was. I did no audio adjustments throughout this video. When I played a clip, it's exactly how you'd hear it on Hulu, and if you're using headphones especially, it sounds terrible. If it's true that Hulu is doing it to increase the episode length to run more ads, it's indefensible, and someone's got to do something about it. But that's my take on the new season of Gumball, and if you enjoyed listening to me ramble, consider leaving a like and subscribe for more. What other stuff would you like me to talk about? That's all I got, and have a good day.